Hi, I am so glad you are here. This is a combined practice of yoga with the scriptures, and I'm following along with the Come Follow Me manual. So it kind of goes week by week or section by section. This week is Alma 17 through 22, or timeline wise, June 22nd through the 28th, or whenever it is that you're in those chapters. But I wanted to share just at the beginning kind of the purpose behind merging these two together. And it actually comes from the manual. There's a little gray box that says Improving Personal Study. And it reads, identify and apply principles. Though the details of scripture stories may not seem to apply to you, the principles in these accounts often do. And so I have found in my own personal study of both the scriptures and yoga as a personal practice, as well as teaching it for so many years, that in my personal practice, if I bring along some of those principles and just bring them onto the mat and slow it down and see how they'll step into my life, I feel that inner voice, that guidance, that connection and softening of the heart and mind. And, the calm and the peace that comes with that. So that's my offering in sharing these videos to you today. And we are going to, the theme or the overlying principle of these chapters today, Alma 17 through 22, is stepping into the space of being led. And whatever that is and however that speaks to you, I'll offer some different guiding principles as we go through our practice. But what does, pay attention to what comes up for you and what might speak to you today. But we are starting in a seated position, and as always, modify as you know how best to modify in your body. Yoga is meaning to unite, and if that means uniting by staying seated in a chair throughout this practice and just listening and opening up meditation, that's a beautiful tool as well. So seated position, and what we're looking for in that seated position is to separate the feet so that we have balance in our sit bones. Take those knees to either side, and for just a moment, awaken with the breath, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. And just notice. I have a soundtrack in the background right now of the birds outside. You are welcome, as always, to play your own soundtrack of music along with these, or listen to those birds right along with me. Just take a moment here to get present. Feel that breath. What do you see? And then go ahead and close those eyes. What do you hear around you? What do you notice within the body? Are there any areas that are a little more talkative right now? Could you give them a touch or maybe some special attention? Just an awareness that you see and you hear maybe their creaks or their soreness. And then let's just take a big sigh together. So it's just like we're inhaling, and then we're just taking a big sigh out through the mouth. Big inhale, and sigh it out. And then let's do the same thing, this time keeping the breath in the nose. Inhaling, exhale through the nose. Beautiful. Inhaling, and sigh through the nose. And on your next breath, gather those fingertips, bringing them together for just a moment. And feeling that spine lengthen, really lining it up against a back wall, feeling those shoulders stack over the hips, the heads over the shoulders. And for just a moment, set an intention or focus on the practice today with these hands. We're going to use hands as our visualization for being led. If we could just close our eyes for a moment and imagine maybe a time when we were actually led through hands, maybe someone grabbing our hand and guiding us. And maybe there's a time when you've grabbed someone else's hand to guide them, maybe a small child, a loved one. Just take a moment to feel and identify with both being led and leading. And as this practice is about gathering both the scriptures and yoga together, my offer to you is in our hands, as we use our hands today, as we place those hands on the earth, that we visualize Christ's hands meeting ours right where we're at. So all of those touch points in practice today, whether they're placing on the mat, just imagine hands connecting with yours, leading right there with you. And just see how that practice and that opening feels in the space today. With your next breath, just visualize that warm, soft touch, that guiding love, both giving and receiving. And then take that intention up to the universe and out into the sky. From here, walk those hands forward. Throughout this practice, I'll be talking about hands. I won't continually reference that guiding point of our intention. That's a beautiful place to think when I say the word hands, to think about whose hands are meeting with yours exactly where you're at. Walking over to your right side. And then lifting your right hand and gently wrapping it behind your back. And maybe it wraps enough that the fingertips wrap into the pocket of your left hip. And from there, we just gently extend those fingertips up towards the knee, stretching over your right shoulder, giving that opening space through the chest and torso. Those hands press into the earth, fingertips pointing forward. And as they press into the earth, we lift the hips gently up towards the sky. Exhale and release. And then alternate the other leg in front, walking hand over hand, one step at a time. Moving the hands to your left corner. Taking your left hand up towards the sky and then wrapping it around the small of the back, maybe even tucking those fingertips to the pocket of the right hip. And gently guiding right fingertips to the outside of the left knee, gazing over the right shoulder, your left shoulder, my right. I'm flip-flopped. Releasing both of those hands, pointing towards the front, and then gently just lifting the hips, leading with the heart, opening up through the chest and torso. Lowering the hips, and as we lower, shifting into all fours. So we have those hands on the mat, maybe visualizing that meeting connection. curling the toes under, lengthening through the spine. And then exhale, rounding into cat. Inhale, releasing in cow. Exhale, rounding through cat. All yoga unites and originates in the spine. So giving the spine just a few moments to warm up and awaken is why we take these movements with the intention that we do. Beautiful tool, especially for opening that heart space that often in our day-to-day movements and activities can feel really tight. Placing those hands firmly into the mat, curling the toes under, and just lifting the knees, maybe half an inch, floating table. Knees stay super bent, and we reach the hips back as if someone's pulling our hips into tiger dog. Inhaling to the floating table, exhaling, tiger dog. Inhaling, floating table, exhaling, tiger dog. And take this on your own breath. Maybe you're moving a little slower than I am. Maybe you're moving a little faster. Just find what feels good for you and your body here and now in this practice. Then extending those legs and finding downward facing dog. First one of the day, pedal through the heels. Lift the heels and lower the heels. Lift the heels nice and high and lower, and then just do a small check with the sun, this nice downward facing dog. Widening the fingertips and just gaze towards those palms. If you're seeing lots of wrinkles in your palms, that's your body's signal to draw those hips back and upwards towards the sky, which might mean bending the knees. Totally okay. We're looking for that length in the spine first. And then check in with the head. Mine's peeking up over, gazing towards you, but we want those ears between the arms. So I can knock my ears from one side to the other and gently feel my shoulders or the inner parts of my biceps. Belly is engaged. Beautiful. So gazing at those fingertips, shifting forward as we lift through those heels and finding ourselves in plank position. Let's lower to the knees and lower ourselves all the way down towards the earth, lifting up gently in cobra. Exhaling, pressing those palms, lifting the belly and hips, and then releasing back, using child's pose to bring us into downward facing dog. Inhaling as we shift to plank, exhaling as we lower down, inhaling through cobra, exhaling, pressing through child's pose, and then downward facing dog. One more time, inhaling with that plank, exhaling, lower down, inhaling to lift, exhaling to press back, using child's pose to guide us. Beautiful. From here, the hands walk towards the feet, so we're working in reverse. As we meet those feet, half lift, exhale, forward fold, and then reaching long in the horizon to come all the way up. Toe healing those feet together and drawing again those hands to the heart center. Close the eyes and walk heel to toe, being led one foot at a time. So we're walking with those eyes closed, a moving meditation, heel to toe, working towards the top of the mat. Noticing how each step becomes so much more wobbly, being led, not being able to see. And then when you feel like you've reached the top of your mat, go ahead and bring those feet together side by side. And just take a glance downward. Did we make it to the top? Did we not? How did that trust space speak to us in stepping a little unknown? Inhaling up towards the sky. My fingertips are just reaching overhead, and then exhale, forward fold. Inhaling, half lift. Exhale, plant the hands, step back to plank. Now, in this plank position, we can work kneeling or on the toes. But remember, by saying no to one, we say yes to the other. There's always another path. So we work through that kneeling plank position, lowering to the earth, or if we're on those toes, we lower no more than halfway, shifting forward, and then lift ourselves up to upward facing dog. Exhale, releasing back, downward facing dog. Gazing at the fingertips, bending the knees, and stepping or hopping towards those palms. Inhaling, half lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhaling, sweep all the way up. We'll do that one more time. My arms are just overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, half lift. Exhale, plant the hands, step back to plank. Kneeling or toes. Lower to the earth. Working through cobra or upward facing dog. And then exhale, release back into downward facing dog. Release the shoulders away from the ears. And take in those breaths. In this space, we lift the heels nice and high. Again, the legs may be bent, they may be extending. But with those heels lifted, we bring the right leg up towards the sky. Bending through the knee, drawing it in towards the chest, and placing it in between the hands. Back leg lowers for just a moment. We toe heel that right leg to the outer edge of the mat, the knee and the foot pointing along the diagonal. And then we walk in the opposite diagonal towards that left corner with the torso. So we feel one in contrast to the other. Noticing the hands. Hand over hand walks back to center. We toe heel the foot directly beneath us. Curl the back leg under, lift the hips, and open warrior two. Checking in with that front leg. Nice and bent. Right leg is bent, left leg is extended, and we find warrior two. As much as we want to move in the forward or the past, we're going to stay right there in the present space. Fingertips of the right hand rotate towards the sky and we reach upwards, reverse warrior. And then extending and reaching into side angle. Beautiful place to stay, resting that forearm on the thigh. Maybe it extends, maybe the top hand wraps behind in a half bind, and maybe we feel a full bind wrapping finger to finger. Elongating and leading with that heart space, noticing the connection of the hands. Remembering that whatever option we choose is a decision that we make. All decisions, the ones that we say no to, guide us into what we say yes to. By saying no, we say yes to something else. From here, releasing that bind, walking those fingertips square towards the mat, back foot, heel lifts and rotates, and we power ourselves forward onto that right leg, finding warrior three. Hands go wherever they feel good for the body. It could be that heart center space. It might be extending back behind or even reaching out in front. I'm going to hit this ball. If I extend. Teeter-totter to a standing position. Left knee guides forward. Gentle knee bend. And we take that rotation, right fingertips to the outside of the left knee. Left arm extends behind us. And then from here, we circle the left leg just like a giant pinwheel. Circle the left arm, and both of our hands plant back into the mat. We step both the feet back and open to a side plank. Now, we can feel side plank with that knee lowered or with both feet extended. We might even like a nice staggered foot extension, or maybe even stacked. Find what speaks to you here and now today, and just breathe in that space, inhaling and exhaling in the present moment, and noticing that the strength that you're feeling is not just your strength alone, but it's the words and that connection, that strength of aligning the heart, the mind, that inner guiding voice. From here, lower that leg down and then lift and reach up to gate pose. Extending those fingertips along the outer edges of the leg. Careful not to put pressure on the knee joint, but reaching above or below. And then cartwheeling everything back towards the earth. Extending the legs behind. Lower and lifting as it speaks to you. And joining together in downward facing dog. Staying in downward facing dog and closing those eyes. Again, bringing yourself back to the hands. Remembering that visualization of holding a hand, maybe being led or being the leader. And as I turn so that you can see me on the other side, you stay planted exactly where you're at in downward facing dog. Breathe in that stillness and that space. And maybe in this moment you stay in downward facing dog. Maybe you work through that flow, that vinyasa flow. But just notice that whatever you choose is an action that you choose to make on this mat. We all have days and times full of so many choices, and recognizing that by saying no to one, we do say yes to something else. And let those no's empower us. Sometimes into the space of simplifying, sometimes into the space of what it is that our heart calls us to. Heels lift as high as we can lift them, and the left leg comes off into the sky. And then we draw the knee in between the chest and hands. Place that foot between the hands. Lower the back knee. Toe heel the left foot to the outside corner of the mat. Foot reaching along the diagonal. And then those fingertips along the right diagonal. Feeling the oppositional energy from one place to the next. And this energy and space could just be a couple of inches from that center point, and that is just beautiful. No matter where we are on these diagonals, they still work the same purpose. From here, centering the hands and foot directly beneath the body. Feeling that back toe go under. And we lift and open into warrior two. Yes, so front leg, we're pointing those toes straight forward, knees in alignment, stretching the arms out, firmly planted and rooted. If I were in your room or with you right now, you could feel And if I were to walk, you could feel me pushing in opposition, a nice strong holding in those arms. Let the left fingertips reach towards the sky, lifting up reverse warrior, and then extending to side angle. Again, taking those places and spaces. Maybe it's resting, maybe it's extending, could be finding that half bind or even a full bind. But we're just feeling those places and spaces. Beautiful. And then releasing those hands, shifting forward and coming into warrior 3. So sometimes in balance, it requires a moment and a place of listening. Stephen Covey, in one of his 7 habits, shares the insights that we seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I found that principle calling time and time again within these verses and chapters that we read. But in this space, in this moment, beautiful, bending that knee and teetering forward, maybe that understanding that we look for is understanding within our hearts. We seek first to understand what truth is, what false beliefs we can let go of. Maybe we seek to understand the openness and flexibility within our minds as much as the body moves from one place to the next. From here, those right legs swing and circle downward as the right arm takes itself up and over, and then we step back first into plank and then release and open to that side plank position. Again, staying stacked and tall. Maybe that knee lowers, maybe the legs stagger, and maybe the legs stack. But as those thoughts come in our minds throughout this practice, maybe we just take a moment to use those tools of mindfulness and awareness and recognize that they are just thoughts. We don't have to hold on to them or hang on to ones that don't serve us or our true unchanging identity. If that knee's not already there, lower it down. Lead with the right fingertips to gate pose, finding that nice balancing space first, and then guiding upwards, hand resting on the thigh or just below the knee joint. Cartwheeling hands to the earth, shifting forward, and taking what speaks to you. Maybe that's coming into child's pose. Maybe that's working through the kneeling chaturanga that we began with in the practice. Maybe that's working through downward facing dog and lowering and lifting through upward facing dog. But take what speaks to you right now. Choose with intention and notice that each movement or each stillness moment that we create is exactly what it needs to be for our bodies today. Take for a minute to close those eyes and join with me into child's pose as you finish up whatever movement your body has called you to today. Come into that child's pose. And if you aren't already there, draw those knees nice and wide, almost to each edge of the mat. The big toes together. And sink back, leading with that heart towards the earth. Wide fingertips in the palms. And for just a moment, imagine his hands coming to rest with yours. Sometimes the phrases being led by the Spirit can feel at times a bit confusing or ambiguous as we're trying to identify what all of that means or feels to us. But slowing things down and just visualizing something as remembering that your hands are not alone, that there are hands to help hold and lead yours, just like you have felt yourself both being led and leading. It can be a beautiful visualization of practical awareness. Walking hand over hand back to a seated position, lifting those hips, and for just a moment before we go all the way down into the final backs on the mat, we're entering boat pose, and let boat be your boat today. So that could be just balancing in this nice vertical space and just engaging through the belly and core. It could be lifting those legs. It could be letting the arms go, and it could be fully extending. But find your space. We'll take 3 yoga breaths, inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Those yoga breaths are slow, I know. Inhaling and exhaling. Beautiful release. Come all the way up to a seated position. And then exhale and lower yourself down onto the mat. Now, working onto the mat, however, it feels good for your body. So it could be grabbing those hamstrings. It might be working through a side lying position. But work yourself down to the mat, engaging through the belly and feeling initially when we come onto the mat that there's a space and a gap between our back and the body. And take a moment with those knees bent to just curl the tailbone and release, pressing that back into the mat. And just notice that positioning when our knees are bent, how that naturally brings the spine into alignment. Now, as the legs extend, we allow a small, not significant, but a small curvature for the body in that lower back. So there is a small space that we allow to create when those legs extend. And just notice the placement and the release of the two, how they speak to you. Some of us might notice that those knees bent with that back pressed into the mat actually feels more relaxing for the body than having the back with a small curve and the legs extended. Just notice what speaks to you. Give yourself permission to try both. And with one final movement in our practice today, together, let's extend the left leg towards the earth, the right knee bends towards the sky, and we take it across the body. Beautiful spinal twist, gazing over those right fingertips. Bringing out any of those tensions. Bringing out any of that comparison, competition, or judgments. And using this spinal twist to literally and figuratively bring out and open ourselves for receiving. Extend the leg, bend the opposite leg, spinal twist in the opposite direction. Recognizing it's less about how much we twist and more just that we open ourselves up to the possibility of twisting. Oftentimes it's that intention It's that motivation, that motive behind. That's the alignment of the heart. And then releasing from that twist and coming into the relaxed space. So again, we have those two placements, the knees bent or the legs extended. And take just a moment to come back into the relaxation that we began with in our practice today. Inhaling through the nose and then exhaling through the mouth, just a sigh of relief. One more time, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, sigh of relief. And then bring the breath back, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. And as we do, come into tune with your senses. The eyes are closed, but what do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you taste? And then last, come into those hands. Maybe those palms are open up towards the sky. Maybe those hands are both pointed down towards the earth. And maybe we have one hand rotated up and one hand rotated down towards the earth. Take a moment to come back to those hands. And as we just notice this present space, staying in this relaxed state, we recognize that everything right here, right now, is okay. In this moment, we are whole. In the present, we have all the tools that we need. And we have the capacity to continue to find what it is we need. I'll be guiding you through a visualization from an upright seated position, and you're welcome to stay exactly where you are right now, or if you prefer also to take that meditative visualization from a seated place, I welcome that for you as well. With the eyes closed, visualize something that you do routinely in your day. Maybe it's even more of a routine in your week. Something that happens time and time again. Seemingly mundane, seemingly ordinary. And take a moment to just choose one. We have lots of mundane and ordinary things I'm sure that we can bring to mind. But just choose one for this purpose right now. Get very specific with it. And bring it into your awareness as if you were watching yourself doing it, like you were watching a movie. And then bring yourself into it as if you can feel yourself doing the actual thing. You've done it so many times, it's just putting it on repeat again. This seemingly ordinary thing is necessary to be done in everyday life. It is something that you choose to do and bring into your regular life. And notice as you're visualizing yourself doing that ordinary, seemingly mundane thing, just notice the thoughts that come up, maybe naturally. Is it something that As you do this ordinary thing, the mind naturally enjoys and sees the wholeness of. If so, keep soaking that in. Is it something where the mind goes to some negative thought patterns of frustration or resentment? And if so, just notice those as they come in. Or is this a type of practice where the mind wanders? And we notice that oftentimes as we're doing this ordinary thing, the mind is off, as if in a whole different place. Just notice that that's maybe any of those places where the mind might go to. But in this moment, as you visualize yourself in this space, I want you to take this intention of the practice today of being led and bring His hands with you into this work. And let this work, this ordinary, seemingly mundane work, be a small offering of God's work. And while the impact of it may be unseen in so many ways, maybe the impact of it is just feeling like the next step into the next thing. Soften for a moment into this work. Soften for a moment into this service, this offering that you give time and time again. As women, these offerings have been throughout history. Maybe for a moment you can think of a story or a time in Scripture where Christ met a woman in her work. Was she getting water? Was she walking from one place to the next in her work? And take a moment to bring Jesus with you into your work. Let His hands lead and guide. And take a moment to remember that this work that you're choosing often means that you've said no to something else. But that by saying no, you have opened a yes. And as we bring this leading visualization in, how does that change the work for you? The task, no different. But the thoughts behind it, how does that change for you? How does that change your heart? Visualizing in that moment. What beliefs would we be saying no to in order to write those beliefs of truth to say yes? And before we close in this practice and visualization, take for a moment to soak in the role of Abish. The power of one individual whose hands stretched, whose hands led, guided, and offered. One person, one place at a time. And for a moment, soak in that power, that capacity of just the one today. Taking to your heart and asking, how can my hands be an offering for one today? Drawing those thumbs across the fingertips, wiggling the toes. If you're not already there, working to an upright seated position. We'll close our practice today just with those hands right at our hearts. Using the moment of stillness to think about that small offering that our hands can lead in some way. Remembering that they don't lead alone. They're our hands leading ours. The light within me honors the light within each of you. May your day be filled with light. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me in this practice today. And my invitation is that you take those hands with that seemingly ordinary and mundane place for you and let his hands come with you. And that you take these hands and however that offering spoke to you for the one today, to just go act on it. No matter how small. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.